Welcome to Redefining ABCD. So hey everybody, welcome back. In this episode, Sneha and I will be diving into the value in vulnerability. Like, what does it mean to be vulnerable? How that kind of affects our daily life, and how that can kind of play in the spheres of the communities that we're represented in, the Western culture and South Asian culture. So we're just going to dive right in because we've got a lot to unpack here. So I guess let's just start off with like, what does it mean to be vulnerable to you?
Okay, so for me, so let's just start off by saying that I think vulnerability and like what it means to you is very different from person to person, very dependent on experience and like what you're comfortable doing and like all that stuff. But for me, I I think I'm most vulnerable when, or not most vulnerable, but when what I see as being vulnerable is like basically showing the sides of me that I usually won't show on a first pass. You know, like a first conversation, I probably won't show you some of the things. I mean, as most people will. You know, like there are parts of me that I will hide on the first conversation with someone. Because that is just something that you got to work up to. You know, you got to, as you build a camaraderie with me, that's stuff that you'll find along the way. It's not something that I'm going to tell you automatically. You got to work for it a little bit. So
Yeah.
for me, like the idea, like the stuff that I find, like when I vulnerability to me is literally just um, being able to showcase the sides that I wouldn't on a first kind of conversation. Those are the things that if I'm sharing those things to someone, then they clearly mean a lot to me. You've done your time, you've worked hard, you've finally gotten to a point where you're close enough to me where I feel like I can be vulnerable with you about these things. So that's what I see, I think, as vulnerability.
hmm I agree with you. That is like, that's very important. You have to work for it because like it's hard to open up. And I kind of feel that in the same way too. I feel like vulnerability comes in different levels. So like
Mm-hmm.
at a deeper level, I agree with you where like opening up about like yourself and things you wouldn't normally tell like everybody to your like personal relationships, like friendships, partners and whatnot. That's like at a deeper level what vulnerability is. But I also think vulnerability is just like being genuine in your actions or responses. Like I was talking to Sneha about before the recording, like when someone asks you, how are you? Everybody just goes, I'm good. Thanks for asking. Like no one actually says like, I'm having a tough day today. Like it's just been really tough. And like, cause like when you start that, like that, everybody kind of knows, like, I don't know. It's just, you can't just open up about that because people will be like, why are you telling me all this? Like, that's why we have the acronym TMI, right? Like, this is
Right,
too much
right.
information. So like, I think just like opening up in that aspect to like actually telling how you are or how is school going or how is work going, like, I'm like, I don't really feel, I feel pretty burnt out or something like that. Like I think
Right, right.
that is like also at a scale of vulnerability as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think also like vulnerability and like the concept of vulnerability has like close ties with boundary setting. And again, because
Oh
you
yeah.
know, because boundaries are so like personal and like something that you set along the way, and they just come sort of naturally as you know talk to someone or hang out with someone or a group of people. You know, they just come naturally. You don't go in like straight up like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that, da, 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 da. But like it comes naturally, so I think it's just like kind of a trial and error with different people, and that's and the more you do that, the more you are can understand when you feel like you can be vulnerable with people. It's just a trial and error sort of thing. Because I know for sure, like when I was like even like the last like even pre-pandemic, like I was very much like I'm just going to be vulnerable with everyone, and I'm just going to expect everyone to just get me and understand me, and like I'm just going to be so open with them, and then just like you know even with like mental health issues, I'm just going to tell everyone it's going to be great, and I'm going to and I think that comes off as like sort of explaining my personality instead of just showing it. There's
Mm-hmm.
you know it's like trying to be vulnerable before someone's ready to hear all that stuff, and it's also trying to be vulnerable without like any sort of thought or like it's gotten me into trouble before where some people like I think it's just a lot for some, it's just a lot, it's too much on the first sort of go. So it's taken, I think, in the last couple of years, especially the pandemic, I've learned to be like, okay, like y'all don't know, y'all don't have to know everything about me. You don't need to know like, where I come from and like the meaning of life before meeting me. You can just know the surface, you can just know the surface level stuff, and that's fine. I'm fine with that at this point. But yeah, so like I think it's just like there's a huge connection between setting boundaries and being vulnerable. I think. Uh, I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I also think like you going back to what you said about the trial and error, like yeah, it's all in trial and error because emotion is such a complicated thing to figure out and you can't really figure that out logically. And I think when it comes to trial and error, you're like in the word trial and error, there's going to be error, right? So like I think you just need to be okay with making mistakes when you like open up
Yeah.
to the wrong person or like you might have said too much or you feel like you exposed a wound to someone that shouldn't have kind of necessarily that won't necessarily give you that band-aid. So I think you just need to be okay that like that you will be making mistakes and you just gotta grow from it. So that's like really hard because like I know a lot of times I've opened up to people and then looking back I'm like, why did I open up to them? Like they just used that against me
Right.
when it came time to have a serious conversation or an argument and it was just not healthy. But like I was very ashamed that I was like, I can't believe I trusted someone like this. But then looking back now, I'm like, I maybe shouldn't feel ashamed. I'm growing from this. Now I know what to look for in a friend or like in a
Right.
partner.
Right. And like I think there's also like a level of like I think like you also have to be ready to like make mistakes and also be able to forgive yourself for it cuz like there is
Yes.
like a lot of like I definitely like I still do this, not gonna lie, like where I'll like be vulnerable with someone and almost immediately as soon as it comes out of my mouth I'm like that was wrong. That was a mistake. Mistakes were made.
I
That
feel
shouldn't have
that.
happened. And I think there's also this tendency, like if someone else is being vulnerable towards me, I have a tendency to also be vulnerable and like just like try to compare my own experiences to them, try to like create that camaraderie, which I think is natural and like should happen. And that is a beauty. That's some of the benefits of being vulnerable. You be vulnerable, and then someone else will also be vulnerable to you, and there's that trust that builds. But at the same time, like when it's the wrong person, you almost immediately feel it, and you're like, this was a mistake, and I don't know why, and I think this might bite me in the butt later. But
Yeah.
and at that point you really can't do anything about it because it's out, it's there and it's out in the open. So I think like me personally I've had to like learn to dial it back a little bit, at least like like I just feel like I come off as too naive, like she's too naive, like she's just telling me everything, like why is she doing this, like why are you doing that, like I don't know, it's just I'm still in the process of I think working on that, and yeah, I don't know.
That's an interesting point you bring up because I'm like, I also like to be open to a lot of people, and so when people also think like, oh, she's too naive. She's like a goody two shoes who doesn't know much about the world. I like
Yeah.
hate that because it's not true. I just want to be genuine and like it kind of I don't know why it reminded me is like you know how like in like South Asian culture there's like I don't know if it's like culture or like the community or whatever it is they like always tell you like be mindful of what you say to others because you don't know how it spreads like you have to look before you say something think about the politics that happen and
Right.
stuff and I'm like this defeats the purpose of like I just want to give my genuine response if I have to think about politics beforehand that makes no sense and honestly to me I don't think that is being naive. I think it's strong that you're able to kind of be genuine so when everybody tells you like hey put that filter on before you like speak or think before you talk like I
Yeah.
don't know why it's looked down upon so much.
I think, yeah, and I think, like, I don't know, to some extent, like, that idea of, like, being mindful of what other people are going to think, in some ways, it is right because you do have to keep that wall up a little bit before getting to know someone. And, like, I get it to some, like, I understand the Indian South Asian take on that, like, but I think the issue is in the South Asian community specifically, it's, like, taken to the extreme. Like, it's almost
Yeah.
like, oh, like, I have to hide everything or people are going to make fun of me. Like that, I don't think is true. But I think with everything, there's a balance, right? Like there is certain things that I feel like I need to hide from other people. And for the longest time, I think because I was rejecting that South Asian mentality, like I was like, no, I don't want to be that South Asian person who just is incapable of like, who's always scared of what other people think. I don't want to be that person. For the longest time, I like just rejected that idea completely and I was like no, I'm going to keep all my walls down. I'm going to let anyone come in and like just like do what they want to do with the information. And in some ways it's great because it's helped me make, basically all the friends and people that I care about dearly. But at the same time, it's brought in some people that I just don't know how to handle, and I don't want them to know these pieces of information. So I think it's important to recognize, like, yes, like it is important that like you should be open and be able to be somewhat vulnerable with the people, like especially even like first meetings, you should be able to do that, but also know when to keep your guard up, like
Yeah.
so I don't know, it's like a balance. It's like a balance that's hard to find until you just try things out and like just go and do
No,
things.
you put it perfectly. Like that balance needs to be there. Like don't open up too much and don't open up too less. I don't know, but like yeah, you put it perfectly, and that kind of goes into like the next questions of like what are the good and bads of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
you brought it up like really well too. Like I think you find those trust people you trust in, like you said, the people you care in, and you can actually make authentic relationships. And I think that's just like the rewarding aspect of being vulnerable. But at the same time, like you said, like if you're open with the wrong people, that can make you break the trust that you have with other people. So like the people
Yeah.
you actually care about might actually like get affected by that. And the biggest thing I feel like that which scares me the most when I talk about vulnerability is being taken advantage of, because
Yeah.
you're open and raw and vulnerable. So like the worst that can happen is being taken advantage of, and that comes like first into my mind when it comes to vulnerability.
Right. Well, and yeah, and if you think about it, like, it only takes one person that you're vulnerable with and like doesn't takes advantage of that for you to just completely dismiss the idea altogether and put
Mm-hmm.
that wall all the way up. Like that's what I mean, it happens all the time, like it just takes that one person who didn't get it for everything to crumble down. At least for me, like in my head, like that's the perception. Like I just and it's like I don't know, like it's very difficult to like come out of that and like break out of that once it's happened to you, because I think that's where there's that it starts developing like a lack of trust in people, lack of vulnerability. Like you feel like you have to hide or they're gonna come and get you or something. And I think that
Yeah.
stems into like anxiety and like certain like certain mental health issues as well. Down the road, like it could, if that keeps happening, I think there's a potential for it to lead into more like not so great things like mental health
Yeah.
issues and stuff like that. So yeah, it's difficult. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like just that one person like not treating you right. Like I can think back like just personally like that one experience that like just holds me back, and like it's really hard to put that wall back down again.
Yeah.
Like once it's put up, and I think that's where like the empathy of like thinking about how people will feel if you said something like is really important, and it's like
Hmm.
needs to be practiced both ways. Like the person you're being open to and the person accepting like that rawness that you're sharing with them.
Yeah, and I think like when it works though, it is really great. Like there's a level of trust there that is so great and so beautiful and something that people should thrive to have in most of their friendships, relationships, whatever. Like I think that level of trust is comes from being vulnerable, but it's hard to tell who to let your guard down with and who to not let your guard down with. And yeah, like I think in terms of like the benefits of being vulnerable, definitely like trust is a great thing to have. Trust and just getting to know people outside of what you're used to. I think that's like vulnerability is like first step in getting that, and I
And
think it's
helping you
important.
grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was gonna on that note, I was thinking about, I think before I also had the issue of like I there was like one person in my past a long time ago that like did like I was vulnerable with, and then they took advantage of it. But then ever since then, like anyone with that personality, anyone who even remotely reminds me of that person, I just can't be vulnerable with. And
Yeah.
that is something that I'm still working through. Like and I'm not just saying like one person, like multiple, like there's key players in my life in the past that have had this impact on me, and it's really hard to like break away from that. I don't know if you had any like thoughts on that, and how you think that maybe we should like continue to like go in a positive direction and just not try to overcome it. I don't know.
I don't know. That's a really good point to bring up, because like I still struggle with that too today. Like I had this one person, I guess in like not like in a friendship, but like in a partner relationship type way where he was not like healthy at all. He'd always constantly tell me all like the flaws in myself, or like whenever I opened up, he would always judge me about it. And I was like, I like at the time I thought it was like my fault. Oh gosh, oh gosh. And then um like later after like that whole relationship thing kind of ended, I was like, it wasn't me. Like it like and like I put up a wall because I always thought I was the problem. And so
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you, I'm still kind of working with that too because anytime someone gives the significant or like comes off like that person, I kind of like shut out or like try to immediately leave the situation. But I
Right.
think like the small steps is just kind of reflecting and being
Yeah.
like we kind of talked about before, like this is the error part of trial and error, and just being like it happened and it's over, but like this helps you grow and like now you know what boundaries to set. And I think when you're approached with those types of people, maybe setting those types of boundaries that remind you of like those bad experiences, just like
Yeah.
set those boundaries first and kind of work with them and have them earn your trust. And I think that can help you kind of heal whatever bad experiences you had with another person that kind of resembled them.
Right. Yeah, like don't jump in head first. Build up to it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's definitely like good. And also like removing yourself from the situation also helps a lot. I think just getting perspective, getting like an outside perspective after removing yourself, I think that's always a great thing. Um in terms of vulnerability, but also just friendship, relationship, dating, everything, forming those connections, sometimes you do need to step back a little bit, which is fine and great and awesome. So yeah, I mean, I guess moving into the next question, do you think that there's like a tendency to hide your vulnerability, like specifically in the South Asian community? Because up until this point we were just kind of talking generally, but do you think there's a specific problem within the South Asian community about being vulnerable? um, uh, why do you think that's the case?
100%. I'm gonna say like, do you? Yep, I see it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think at like a such a young age, we're just drilled into our heads. Like when you walk out of the door, everybody's looking at you. Like everybody's gonna have a say and an opinion about what you're doing, even the smallest actions. And in reality, that's not the case. Like you're not the main character of the world. Like calm down.
Right, right,
like in that
right.
way. But we're drilled with this mindset of like everybody's watching your every move. Like be careful what you do, and that causes so much anxiety because you're like, oh, I just did something. It's just like you start overthinking, like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think if I did this, this, and this? I
Yeah.
just did this, and you're just like in a thought loop, like, oh my god. But yeah, going back to the question, yeah, it's definitely in the South Asian community, and I think it's because of that survival mindset that we always keep going back to with our parents, just coming from a perspective of an Indian American. They're
Yeah.
like, whatever it takes to survive. So like if that means like hiding all the bad and only showing the good, that's what we got to do because that's going to help us move forward. But in reality, that's not the case because I feel like if you're vulnerable, you're able to grow. And so if you're suppressing these emotions, you're never going to grow to the most ideal version of yourself, if I look at it logically. So I think just vulnerability and like I don't know, I don't know if just to generalize it to the South Asian community or just people in general. But like vulnerability is seen as a weakness, and I honestly think it should be a strength because it is really hard to open up about yourself and being okay with sharing whatever's in your head to everybody else without feeling like you're going to be judged. So
Right.
that's
Yeah,
my two
no.
cents on it.
I agree. I agree with all the points. I think, yes, you're right. There is a huge issue of just like suppressing everything that means anything to you in the Indian community, or like what anything that feels abnormal or out of place should be like tucked away under your brain.
Mhm.
And I don't know why you're right. It is viewed as a weakness. It is viewed as a weakness to not be similar to everyone else, because I feel like you stand out and people are more likely to point things out to you, and in a way like it's kind of scary. I mean, we're told from a young age that people care about you and like they will always like be looking at you, and the world is like, for some, I think to some extent that's true though, like, you know what I mean, like there are some people within our community that do have like a 24/7 like I don't know, binoculars on everyone. Like they just care about what everyone else is doing. And they're usually
Yeah.
they're usually also the ones who are telling everyone else about it. Like, oh, like LOL, like, did you hear what XYZ? Like, and it's not just like normal gossip or rumor where like they're not going to do anything about this. Like they're talking about things that could easily affect this person's life in very real ways. And they're just
Mhm.
talking about it like it's regular gossip. And it's like, oh, they're trying to like tell on you, like they're trying to like get them, you know. And I think Janani, we recently interviewed Janani, I don't know, from the Indian Standard very recently, and she was saying something similar, and I think she put it really well. Like everyone just is trying to get each other, like, oh, like LOL, did you hear that this person's in a relationship with XYZ? Did you hear about? And they're like doing it in the notion or the perception to like hurt them, as opposed to
Yeah.
be happy for them. And it's horrifying. Like it's horrifying that these people actually exist in our community, and these are the people that our parents were trying so hard to like, scare us away from. But at the same time, it's affecting like our regular relationships. Like the fact that we can't be vulnerable is affecting so many of our other like healthier relationships and friendships and all
Mhm.
that stuff. And it sucks that it's so hard to decipher the two. It's so
Yeah.
hard to like kind of untangle the two and see them as two separate things. But yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah. Like
hard.
the lack in vulnerability does lead to like people acting in that way. Because like, if you, that's what I was thinking too. I was thinking similarly, like the lack in vulnerability. That's like what the competition mindset in the Indian community or the South Asian community. It stems from being lack of vulnerability, like not being open. Like, hey, I got rejected from this position. I got rejected from this school. Like, and being okay with it. Like, those all stem, like that's what competition stems from. And I think that the mindset that we were taught of just like showing your best self is why people are like that in our South Asian community. They're like, I just need to get out to get everybody so that no one kind of looks at me and like
Right.
sees that there's so many things wrong with my side or my life that I don't want to share with anybody else. So I think that it just, I feel like the value vulnerability is very valuable, and it's like the ground level work for a lot of the problems that stem in our community.
Yeah, and I think like just destroy. There's also like a kind of tendency to like suppress your emotions, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
a tendency to hide and like not really like express like, hey, are you doing okay? There's really no like, oh, I'm not. Help. Like there's no
Like,
like
yeah.
willingness, like, and I think that's not necessarily South Asian community. I think even in Western culture, in American culture, whatever, like, I don't know, no one likes to talk about their failures. Like, it's kind of like, who wants that? Who wants to hear that? And I think it's not necessarily that they haven't come to terms, at least for me. It's usually not that they haven't or I haven't come to terms with it. It's just like I don't think people are going to want to hear that from me, who's perceived as a very bubbly, like happy person all the time. And it's
Yeah.
like I just don't want to put that on someone else. Like I feel like I'm being a burden by putting like, like things that I shouldn't like that like problems that I shouldn't have or I don't seem like I would have. I don't want to put that on other people who don't think, I don't know. It's very
I think
difficult.
I think that's where it comes into like the opening up to the right people.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
you, if it feels like it's a burden, then maybe that's not the right person to talk about it with.
Right.
Just because that shows like a signal of like, oh, I don't think I can trust them to like give me a healthy response.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very hard to like kind of distinguish, and it is very prevalent in the South Asian community, I think,
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Um,
kind of taking kind of taking it into like a different lens. I guess, how do you see the lack of vulnerability affecting us as Indian Americans or like someone with a hyphenated identity in like a community like the South Asian or like a one culture like community?
I think I think okay, speaking specifically South Asian wise, I think I've basically been just across the board. I think I've like had this like not switch, but like I do change a lot of how I interact with people and how what I feel comfortable talking about depending
Mm-hmm.
on like who the like if the other person is South Indian, if the group of people that I'm hanging out with are also South Indian or POC, the things that I talk about and things that I am more comfortable talking about and being vulnerable about is very different than what I feel comfortable and able to be vulnerable about with non POC or non South Indian people. Like it's very different. So I think like just having that separation, like I've been like even as a young like even when I was really young, I knew how to separate those two things, right? And I think the act of continue just always thinking about like, oh, I'm with these people, so I can't be I have to be vulnerable, or I can show this side of myself, but I can't show that side. And then, oh, if I'm with these people, I can show this side, but not that side. I think that constant like sort of like battle between the two really has, I think, created like a sort of a separation between them. Like I genuinely just feel like I at one point there was a big disconnect between these two sides of me that I would show to people, and it's really hard to like now I'm kind of at the point where I'm seeing this issue and I'm trying to bring those two sides of me together. Trying to show like this side, the other side, and then the other side, like this Indian side, and like trying to bring those two together and like make it so that I'm a full personality, not just half of one or the other. And it's hard. I think that, and that again, that comes with vulnerability. It comes with just being open and being more like not stopping myself from like making references to Indian culture in my amongst like non POC people, and also not hiding like, oh, the fact that I'm in art school with Indian people, like, and not like trying to hide one or the other in different groups. So I don't know. It's hard.
No, I get
That,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, you feel like you're like two different people. Like, I can totally, like, if I stepped out of a conversation and saw myself talking to people, I feel like I could see two different Keerthis in two different, like, settings. So I totally get that. And it can
Right.
get confusing.
Yeah. I mean, especially like if you're younger, like, I don't know, like you already have so many other like stupid things to worry about. Like, oh, I am going to homecoming alone. That's sad. To like now, these kind of bigger things, and to have to deal with all of that at once. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help.
Yeah.
SOS.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Kind of going into like the hyphenated identity side of things, I feel like we're already struggling with like in general like the separated of two different like American side and Indian side, similar to what you were talking about. So I feel like when we're all suppressing it or like just getting confused, we're not really talking about it, and that could kind of like, I feel like that stems into like the loss of self confidence, the loss of self esteem or self worth, or even like just isolating ourselves. We feel so alone because we're so confused, but we're always like suppressing it. And I think going back to that competition mindset, I feel like in the South Asian community, because we're so like ingrained of showing only the good sides. As Indian Americans, when we communicate with other Indian Americans as like friends and stuff like that, we're not able to get like beyond that level as well. I feel like, so I think we just need to like I think we just need to step away and be like, we need to unlearn how we view vulnerability as a weakness,
Right.
because that can question. I feel like that was like the longest time I had as like being a person in Indian American. I feel like to my non-Indian friends, I could get more close with quickly because there was no like level of like, oh, she's gonna break my trust to stab me in the back. There was no
Right.
like question in that area because I've never really been as competitive with my like non-Indian friends. Whereas this is my Indian friends, I have that in the back of my head. Like if I say this, she's going to come later and stab me in the back, or she's going to
Right.
use this to her advantage. So I think we need to like really, as a group of Indian Americans or just hyphenated like South Asian Americans or whatever, we need to unlearn that so that we can, because like it like led to me like questioning, like it leads to like questioning your support, like what are your values and friends and partners, like that questions everything that we have. So like it's like, ah, so much we need to unlearn. I don't know how to
Right.
put this into words.
No, 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 you're right. You're right. Like I think collectively in the South Asian community, there just needs to be more empathy towards one another. Like we just need
Yes.
to be nicer to each other. Like we're so mean. Like like I don't, and maybe that's just like a perception of like me. Like maybe it's changed since then cuz like okay, to be quite honest, like I haven't like hung out with like my South Asian friends from high school in a while, like it maybe things have changed. I don't know. But like I from what I remember and my perception of it from like before pre-college, even like the first couple of years of college, like I just remember it being so toxic and being so like I have to watch my step. I gotta be real careful. Like it's a real danger here, like of me oversharing or like being vulnerable. Like I can't do that here. because I just know that someone is going to come and like I don't know, stab me in the back. Like I got to be careful. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's different now, but it definitely was not great
Yeah,
pre-pandemic and like
it's
before.
scarring.
It's scar and it doesn't go away. You know, it's not something that you can just simply like fix and like, oh, it's not something you can just compartmentalize into like, oh, this
Hmm.
is how, whatever. Because it's complicated. Like there's some there. I'm gonna say that a majority of the South Asian people within our community are actually really genuinely nice. But for some reason, when we all come together, there's like everyone has this perception, right? Everyone is so guarded. Everyone is so walls up that we can't talk openly sometimes about
Hmm.
certain things. And I think that needs to change if we're gonna, collectively, because I think we're all more or less on the same page, but we're also all very riddled with like mental health issues and like underlying like generational trauma that we never dealt with and like all this stuff. And like I think the only way that we can ever get to those nitty gritty like topics is by being able to put our guard down for just a half a minute so that we can be vulnerable towards each other and just talk
Exactly.
about it. Just talk
Hmm.
about it. Like, I don't know. And I don't
I
know if that's going to ever happen in this generation, or maybe we're just at our
honestly,
age not there yet, but I don't know. I don't know.
no, honestly, like you're right. Like as I know a lot of like my South Asian friends, like if I talk to them one on one, we can have a good conversation. And I
Yeah.
normally like I like hanging out with them, like I'll grab lunch with them. But like when it comes to group setting, like the dynamic changes.
Yeah.
And I think we need to just carry through what we do individually into a group setting or not let the bad apples of the bunch ruin it for everybody else. I think that is
Right.
so important because I feel like everybody talks about the same thing. Like, oh, everybody, the South Asian community is toxic. South Asian community is toxic. Everybody says that, and I think
Yeah.
it's because there's those few bad apples that kind of ruin that experience for everybody. So I think you're right. Like, we just need to set our guard down and then like maybe clean those bad apples or toss them to the side. I don't know, but
Yeah.
we just gotta push forward. And I don't know if we'll see it in our hopefully we can see it in our friend circle, and hopefully we all grow in a way where we can be open with each other. I hope, but I don't know if we
Yeah.
can see it. It's a
I
good
don't.
point.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because like okay, again, we're like what early 20s,
Hmm.
like I don't know. Psychologically speaking, I feel like none of us are really there to have those type of conversations. I
Hmm.
don't think collectively speaking, but I think like maybe in the next couple of years, when you hit your mid 20s, late 20s, like you'll start having other kinds of problems are going to rise, right? Like there's going to be people are in relationships now, people are getting married, people are having kids. Like I think with those kind of experiences, there'll a lot of the other stuff will start coming to light, hopefully, and people can be more vulnerable and like ready to talk about these things. But I don't know, like as of now, like I don't think anyone. I mean, there's not a lot of people who, at least in the people that I know, are ready to do that. So I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
no, I
It's
feel
just
that. I feel that.
it's hard. It's hard. Okay, so moving on to the next question. How do you see the lack of vulnerability in Western culture, and how do you think that's different or similar to how lack of vulnerability is perceived in like South Asian community? Like, what's the
So like, how is it
differences?
different to the Western? Like, how is Western culture?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm. I think I think it's. I'm gonna be honest here. I think it's very similar to South Asian community. Like, I don't think like it's too polarizing or too different in like looking at both of the communities. I just think that I feel more comfortable opening up to people who are not in the South Asian community, just like with my friends and stuff like that, just because there is no competition mindset. There's not like I'm out to get you mindset that is like so prevalent or showing. But and like I think the key thing is like a lot of my friends, I look back at my friendships, we have a mutual understanding of like being vulnerable with each other and being like more like genuinely like telling how we feel. So I think that's what it is. So kind of looking at it as like it's a people's problem, and it's not really like one specific community is kind of worse or different than the other. It's just like the scope or level of how vulnerable you are is different. Like I between the two communities, like in Western culture, it's like kind of okay to be open and deep with like your relationships. In like South Asian culture, I don't think that is so necessarily the case in
yeah.
some relationships.
No, I agree, and it's like I think it's also because both cultures kind of perceive vulnerability as two different things. Like they perceive the thing. the things that one culture perceives as being vulnerable is very different than what the other culture perceives as being vulnerable. Like, for example, like, I don't know, like in American culture, it's pretty normal, in conversation to talk about your sexual history or your dating history, or like that's
Mm-hmm.
like those kind of topics are what you talk about when you start getting vulnerable with someone. When you
Yeah.
start be getting close to someone, those are the first kind of topics that come to light. You know, whereas in South Asian culture, being vulnerable, like there's, like in South Asian culture, you being vulnerable can just as easily be like talking about like periods, and like that's like a normal thing that happens. Like, oh, your period came. Oh, you're coming of age. Oh, family drama is like right out in the
Oh
open. Like
yeah.
when you talk to someone, you're just like, oh, this person, like my relatives, like a cousin's cousin got married the other day. Like that's a normal conversation to have in a very like preliminary stage of like dating, relationship, whatever, friendship. Whereas like in American culture, that'd be kind of frowned upon. That's like too much. It's like, oh, like family stuff. Like you don't talk about it until much later. Like that's whoa. Like
Yeah.
and it's the opposite. Like and I don't know. It's just like hard. It's hard because both cultures see different topics as being more vulnerable. Like the stages of getting closer with someone is very different,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to like understand and figure that out, and like it's difficult. Like I'm still in the process of figuring it out. I don't really know. Like I don't know. I just
No,
know see
you're
the
right.
inside. Like I don't know.
I think it's the way that we perceive life is how it's very different. Because like just looking at it from like a love perspective, the American side, you go out, you date, you meet people, you mingle, and then maybe like 3 or 4 years later you like live with the person, and then 3 or 4 years later you get married. Like I don't know the timeline, but that's kind of necessarily like the generic steps people take. Whereas in
Right.
the Indian cultures, you don't even get to know this person. Sometimes your family gets to know the person first. The family gets to know the other person's family
Mm-hmm.
too, and then you connect and you get married. There's like no dating phase, or there might be, but it's like 1 or 2 dates. It's not like three or
Yeah.
four years. And so I think just the way we approach like our relationships is the reason why we look at vulnerability in a different way.
The
And I want to
timeline
be
is different. The timeline's
yeah.
different. That's it. Like we're all gonna end up talking about these topics, but they're all like in different points in the timeline. So
Mm-hmm.
like I find it, especially like dating wise, like I don't know what I can and cannot tell someone on the first date, because I don't know how much, like, because I don't know, like I don't know how
Yeah.
vulnerable I want to be in this. I don't know. I don't know. It's
No, I get
difficult.
it. Yeah. And like
um,
should I just like tell you about my Indian side? Like I don't know. Like do you
like
want to
I
know? Is that right?
Well, and then like I'm like, okay, but like, if I tell my Indian side, then I can like wheedle them out, right? Like if they have a weird perception about it, I'd like to wheedle you out in the first date than like the fourth date. So like, oh, like I feel like I'd much rather just get to the nitty gritty stuff all in the beginning, and then just
Mm-hmm.
so that I can like figure out if I want to invest more energy into you. Like
Yeah. No.
I don't
Exactly.
know. But like I don't know. It's just difficult because like the timelines are different, and you don't know like when you're allowed to be more vulnerable and like what to be vulnerable with at any given
Yeah.
point. I don't know.
And like and the topics that are deemed vulnerable or like ooh no, let's not talk about this in public are very
Yeah,
different. Like I can be like very open with my American friends, like yo, I'm on my period, just give me a break here, I like need to like lay down in bed for one. But like if you can't even talk about it, you just gotta be like, you have to like walk around that topic. You're like, I'm on my girl monthly thing, and like I'm like, just freaking say period, my god.
do you need a tampon? Like, excuse me. Like, what do you
Exactly.
want? Like,
Yeah. Oh
I don't
man. Or like
know.
in American culture, like friends will just talk about like you said, their sexual history and like how like maybe like they'll go hook up with a guy one night. And like if you say that in the South Asian community, I don't know how that's gonna go.
You're gonna
I'm
get
gonna be honest
disowned.
here.
You're gonna
Yeah.
like, and it's not. I'm not even talking about like aunties. I'm literally talking about people in our generation. You are going to get disowned from this group if you just go like, "Oh yeah, I had a one night stand with someone the other day. It's fine. It's cool." Like I don't know. Like there's so much like judgment behind that. Like there's no like accept it and move on.
Yeah,
Like I
or
don't
not even
know.
that. Like even like the simplest things that are not as quote unquote polarizing and stuff. Like drinking. Why do I have to freaking hide the fact that I drink? I am 21. I'm legal in this country to drink. Why is it such a taboo to drink? And especially as a woman, why is it like why is that weird? Like, I want to have
Yeah.
a cold beer and fried chicken on a Friday night. Just let me. God damn it.
Just let me be the most American I can be, please, God. Like,
Please.
I just want the experience. It's fine. Anyways, but yeah, no, it's difficult. So it is hard to like judge it. And I think again it's trial and error. There's really no way to get around it because there's no rule book. Like, like you can say, like, I think we talked about it in our last episode that we recorded about like how like like we are the older siblings of South Asian American Indian people. Like we are the trial and error guinea pigs. Like there's really no right or wrong answer. We're just here as guinea pigs so that the next generation can be better and like, our kids will know better and it'll be great.
We're like the cavemen of our race. Like, we're figuring it out.
I mean, yeah, like in the most cynical way, yes. That's exactly our only purpose in this world.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like it's just hard. Yeah. I don't know. So it's like the difference, not to get super existential, but like, like it's hard. It's hard to decipher between the two and know when to talk and not talk. And yeah. Yeah.
Because we're figuring out everything all at once at the same time. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, I also was gonna ask you, like, do you ever feel like you're like ever like just in terms of like social settings, and again, I don't know how much this is like South Asian culture versus like mental health issues, but do you ever feel like you're just like 2 years behind everyone else? Like when it comes to like knowing how to talk to people and knowing when to talk about things. Like I have no self-awareness for how I should talk to people in terms of like what to talk about, when to talk about it, all that stuff. I'm always 2 years behind. Like I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know how to do that.
I feel that, girl. Like, I was meeting new people at work recently, and I was like, "So, where are you from?" And then after I asked them, I'm like, "How do I continue this conversation? Like, should I just go straight into being like, hey, what do you think about this?' Or like, should I just be like, what are your hobbies? Like, I don't know like what level to like talk about. So I totally get that because
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
It's hard, and it's like I never know, and I always feel like I'm 2 years behind my white counterparts, and I know that's literally internalized racism to a T, and I get it. I know it logically. My brain and my heart are saying two different things. It's fine, which usually is the issue with me personally, but I don't know. Like it's hard. It's
Not
hard
only
to
like
decipher.
in like social, like not only that, like thinking of like, am I going on the right track of making friends or whatever, like in that section, but like I feel like I'm 2 years behind on just like culture in general, like mainstream pop culture. Like I do not enjoy the antics of TikTok. Like I'm gonna be honest with you, like I don't really have a TikTok account, or like I don't post what I eat every day on like Instagram. Like I
Yeah.
don't know like the lingo or like the hip things that are in. Sometimes I feel like a boomer myself. I'm gonna be
The
honest
hip
here.
things.
I don't know, bro. I feel like a boomer to like the max all the time when I'm talking about conversation. Like, so I like definitely feel like I don't know what I'm
Well,
doing in
okay.
social situations.
No, like here's one meme culture. Like, what the hell is meme culture? I don't understand it on any level. I don't even understand the Indian memes. I'm not gonna lie to you. Tamil memes, don't get it. American memes, don't get it. Like, don't come at me with meme culture. I don't understand it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's like such a prevalent social thing. I just don't get it. Talk to me about Twitter and movies and like Hollywood and everything in between, and I will talk about it. But when it comes to like, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah, I
I
feel
don't
like,
know.
man. You want to talk about Elon Musk? You want to talk about tech? Hit me up. You want to talk
Yeah.
about like Reddit memes or like those weird like, oh my god, I can't get into meme
I'm
culture.
so like maybe I can in the future and maybe someone will take it on themselves to teach me this way of life, but I just am not there yet. I'm not there yet. But yeah, so yeah, 2 years behind. Just it's
Yep,
fine.
yep. I
um,
feel that, girl. Don't worry. But anyways,
anyways.
back to vulnerability. I
Yes.
guess we should kind of. I guess this is like kind of like the last question. So like just kind of wrapping up everything about vulnerability and our conversation today. How do you think we can? We talked about like the good and the bad of vulnerability, and also like personally, but also in like various communities and cultures. I guess how can we kind of change our mindset to start opening up as individuals? Because I feel like that's super important if we want to look for like a better way of improving those cons that we've mentioned.
Um, well, hmm. There's a lot of things that you could do. I think. I think being able to see the darker sides of yourself is a
Mhm.
huge step. Because I think only when you can, I sound so cheesy when I'm saying it, even when I'm saying it. But it's very overpreached. But I think you have to know like yourself before being able to get to know and being able to share that vulnerable side of you to other people. You have to know yourself enough to know what parts that you want to share right off the bat and what parts you want to share later on. What parts do you want to share, like, what parts do you only share to your inner circle friends? What about, like, you have to know yourself. You have to be able to look the dark sides and the bad side, the good sides, all of it, all in the eye, and look at it very objectively. And until you can do that, I don't think you can be properly vulnerable with other people. So I would say first step would be, take care of yourself.
Mhm.
Take care of yourself. Like, self-care is important. Journal it out. Like, do whatever you need to do to get to know yourself before letting other people in, or letting, like, people into that most vulnerable stage. You can keep people. I also don't think you have to be completely vulnerable with people in order to have friends or anything.
Yeah.
Like, that's also a preconception, right? Like, or a misconception. Like, you have to be able to be super vulnerable in order to have friends. That's not true. You can have friends, but it just, how much you let them in is dependent on how much you know yourself. So get to know yourself first, and then you can let people in a little bit at a time until you form those connections that you really want and need. I think. But yeah.
100%. Yeah, yeah, kind of going off of that. I think once you're able to kind of figure out what you kind of deem as vulnerable for yourself, I think just be okay or get comfortable about opening up. It doesn't have to be like your deep, darkest secrets, but like just like the small things, like, yeah, I secretly binge watch this, or I'm
Right.
into K-pop,
Right.
whatever it may be. Um, but like just being okay with just like opening up about those small things that you kind of hide about yourself with like the people you care about is, I think, the next step after you figure out what you feel is like vulnerable. And then also realize when you have opened up to the wrong person. Kind of going back to that, because like once you realize you've opened to the wrong person, you know those kind of triggers or mentalities that you shouldn't kind of go towards, and you can work on growing yourself or finding what it means to have a good person in your circle from those experiences. So be comfortable with that as well, because we're all learning at the end of the day. We're all going to end up making mistakes. It's just that being okay with it and moving on is just the harder part that we have to kind of go through.
I
And
agree.
yeah, once we
Yeah.
practice it confidently ourselves, I think it'll kind of spread like a wildfire, because I mean that's how mainstream culture is. Like when one person makes it trendy, everybody else wants to do it. So if we're all just trying to working on ourselves, maybe one day it'll become mainstream.
Right. Well said. Wow, that's such a
Thank
great
you.
ending. Such a great ending to this episode. Yeah, I guess that concludes our episode. Very happy to talk to you, Kirti. This is really fun. Always great to just kind of rant about vulnerability and, like, very deep stuff that you
I
don't really.
agree.
It's great. It feels good, and, like, it feels great to be here, and put it out there on this podcast. So thank you all for the listeners who stuck around till the end. Very happy that you're here. Hope
Yes,
that you
thank you.
still continue to be here as we produce more content, and it's going to be great. Okay, awesome.
All right, see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
So before you kind of leave us today, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Ravi Ray Audio. You might have heard that our intro and outro music is a little bit different this season and is definitely upgraded to a next level. That's all thanks to Ravi Ray, who was our last guest in season 2, and he agreed to help us out with our music for season 3. So thank you so much, Ravi Ray, for all your help. And if you guys want to get in contact with him to collaborate with any projects or work with Ravi Ray Audio, we are linking his information to the episode description, so you can reach out to him or see all the other projects he's done. And thanks again, Ravi, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.